30. I hate you. The worst.
Busy, man. I have a lot to do.
On Sunday mornings, you have a lot to do.
Yeah.
Touch yourself. Yeah, we're live, by the way. I said that live.
Perfect.
All right. Hold on a second.
I sound pretty jealous.
Of what? Touching yourself?
Yeah. That's what I get to do on Sunday morning.
I went to I did the super basic white person thing, and we went to the farmer's market with our pumpkin spice coffee.
Oh my God. Ugh.
What are you oh my godding?
That is absolutely awful.
Why is that awful? All right to me.
You know that's the lamest thing you could have done.
What else am I supposed to do in the morning?
Watch football. Watch that football game.
That ugly ass football game that's going on.
You'd rather be at the farmer's market drinking pumpkin spice bullshit.
Yeah, we got good stuff. I don't know, man. Don't judge me. You sound jealous now. You sound jealous.
I am judging.
You sound jealous.
Yeah, you know me too well.
All right. Let us get this shit going here. Fuck you, Twitter. Twitter's such a pile of shit. I hate it so much. All right. Let's retweet this. Control C, get this out. Control V. Control V.
Let me see what we got for injuries while you
Mahomes is out. That's all
dig through your purse and try and find your balls.
Oh, wow. That was uncalled for. What the fuck? What's going on, everybody? I see we have 10, 11 people watching as John makes fun of
good timing.
My balls. John thinks about my balls too much. Welcome to week 9.
They all do.
Our FF. Yeah, that's true. I did put them out on the internet.
You planted that.
I put those out on the internet. We are here for week 9 live. I'm here with John Hogue at Superflex Dude. I am, of course, at FF Stompy. Unfortunately, Matt has had some technological issues and his computer took a shit. So it's just us this week again. So, yeah, I mean, let's get started. We have a game going on right now in London. Houston is beating the Jacksonville Jaguars 12-3 in a barn burner of a game. I think a lot of people thought this was going to be a lot better, but it is Jacksonville versus Houston, and that just seems to be the way that things go. I believe Houston beat Jacksonville 13-12 the last time they played. So, but yeah, we need to talk about the upcoming slate of games. So I guess we'll just get this started. And of course, as always, send your questions in. We will try and answer those as timely as possible. We are here for your start sit questions today. But we will start with the Washington Football Club at Buffalo. The over-under here is 37. Buffalo is giving 9.5 points. So effectively a double-digit line here.
Mm-hmm.
Is there anything on Washington that you want a part of this week?
I mean, Adrian Peterson's going to get volume if that does anything for you. Chris Thompson's still out. So, I mean, it's Peterson's backfield all the way. I mean, he could get 25, 30 carries in the touches in this game. Dwayne Haskins with his first start. I mean, you can't trust the pass catchers.
That's going to be bad.
I think that Adrian Peterson is probably a flex consideration just because of the volume. Like, they can't even worry too much about the score, you know, at this point. This is all about get Dwayne Haskins on the field and get him some experience. And so they're not going to go into, chasing point mode where you have to throw first, second, third down. You're not going to see that today. You're just going to see, a watered down version of the passing game, and you're going to see a lot of Adrian Peterson.
So obviously with Dwayne Haskins, there has to be some concern with Terry McLaurin. He's obviously, I think in 3 of the last 4 games has just not been near the same as he was starting the year. And now he gets
Tre'Davious White.
Yeah, well, he gets Tre'Davious White, and he gets a rookie quarterback who, yes, he has chemistry with, but at the same time, we saw Haskins struggle against a lowly New York Giants defense and secondary with 3 interceptions. Can you put Terry McLaurin out there today, especially against Tre'Davious White and the Buffalo Bills, or is there a better option?
Oh man, I'm trying to think of like what type of settings, like how deep does this league have to be? Like a 12 team league where you have to start 4 wide receivers. Like that's the type of thing where you're at least considering Terry McLaurin. And beyond that, I just can't think of very many scenarios. I mean, Paris Campbell's a better start. Deontay Johnson is a much better start.
I mean, I have like Hunter Renfrow as a decent start this week because, and we'll talk about this later, but because of Detroit's propensity to give up fantasy points to slot receivers. And I would honestly think about starting Hunter Renfrow over Terry McLaurin this week.
Yeah, for sure. In the same game, Danny Amendola on the other side. Yeah. He's a much safer. He's actually a good start, but I guess the point being here, they're guys on waivers who are better starts than Terry McLaurin this week.
Yeah, absolutely agree. So, I mean, unless you're extremely desperate, I would be avoiding Terry McLaurin this week. I would be avoiding basically all of Washington's players this week because I think this is how Buffalo's going to play it. They'll stack the box against Adrian Peterson, make Dwayne Haskins beat them, and I don't think it's going to happen because that secondary is very good for Buffalo. So probably avoid all around for Washington for me. On the other side, some decent starts this week. I mean, Josh Allen is always a decent start just because of his rushing floor. But with the wide receivers, I mean, Cole Beasley's been heavily involved, and I believe he has 2 touchdowns over the last 2 games. John Brown is a wide receiver 1 there, and he faces a relatively poor secondary. So, I mean, is there anybody else that you're starting? I mean, do you like Cole Beasley and John Brown this week?
Definitely Beasley. I think Beasley's a pretty safe start. Brown, it's a little tougher. I think that Washington has been decent on those outside, those perimeter wide receivers. So I think that you probably have better options than John Brown too. This is another one where, I mean, it's just too easy to just pound the ball, you can run with Josh Allen. But I think that Frank Gore gets a ton of volume. I think Devin Singletary takes some of that as well because, where you can probably put that 25 type touches on Adrian Peterson, I don't think you're going to see that with Frank Gore necessarily. I think you're more likely to get, somewhere in the neighborhood of 15 from him and maybe around 10 for Devin Singletary.
Yeah, I mean, and if we think that the Washington offense is going to be as poor as, I mean, like I said, we think maybe they're going to go up big and just pound the rock the entire game. So, I mean, that's a valid point. I mean, Tyler Kroft is an okay start, I suppose, if you're desperate for tight ends, but I'm not really trusting him. I believe 2nd game back from his foot injury. So, yeah, I mean, if you need to start Tyler Kroft, that's fine.
And there's still Dawson Knox there to vulture a touchdown. So, yeah, it's tough at tight end too.
This tight ends this week are especially rough because of bye weeks, because of matchups. Their tight ends this week are pretty bad.
Yeah.
All right. Now, not to such a boring game as well. No, this one might be as boring too. Tennessee at Carolina. The over-under is 42. Carolina is giving 3.5 points. I almost said decent there. A lot of okay matchups here. I mean, you're obviously starting Christian McCaffrey. He's basically matchup proof. Derrick Henry's an extremely good start this week. The Panthers have struggled against the run, especially of late. They've given up the third most fantasy points to running backs over the last 5 weeks. They've given up 2 100-yard games in two of their last 3 games. So Derrick Henry's going to get volume. That's going to happen. So Derrick Henry's a good start. So start both running backs this week. Not in love with Samuel or DJ Moore, but because this offense is so concentrated, they are okay starts against the Titans defense that is actually good against wide receivers, or has been of late. They are allowed the 20th most fantasy points. On the other side is the question here. So we have Ryan Tannehill, who threw for 3 touchdowns last week under 200 yards. Obviously, you're not going to be able to trust the touchdowns week in and week out, especially if you're only throwing for 193 yards. Is there anybody in the wide receiver group for Tennessee that you would start this week against Carolina?
Corey Davis is a flex consideration for me. Right around, I think I've got him at wide receiver 30. Don't have my rankings pulled up, and I really should, but about wide receiver 30. So, kind of a mid-range flex. He's definitely kind of emerged as a top option for Ryan Tannehill. Jonnu Smith, Delaney Walker out again. So Jonnu Smith is a tight end 1 this week. Like you said, there's pretty bad matchups everywhere.
Yep.
We're missing a lot of key tight ends with buys and guys who have already played. So, it definitely pushes Jonnu Smith up close to top 5. Beyond that, AJ Brown in super deep leagues, but that Panthers secondary is kind of sneaky good, and it just kind of raises some red flags, I think. You've got Bradbury, and then I cannot remember the other guy's name. Is kind of a newer development, but they've all of a sudden they've got 2 pretty good perimeter type guys. So
I don't know if there's enough volume there is the big thing. Like, they just don't throw a lot, the Titans. And I believe they are ranked 10th in the league in terms of run to pass ratio. They don't, there it is. Dante Jackson. Thank you, Scott, in the chat. Dante Jackson is the other cornerback, but they don't throw a lot. Every once in a while, like one Brown or Davis will get the targets, but Tajay Sharp has been relatively involved lately. Though he's only played 37% of the snaps in each of the last 2 games. He is getting he's gotten 3 targets in each of those. You obviously can't rely on that. Like you said, Jonnu Smith has actually been pretty involved. Has, I believe, 142 yards over the last 2 games and a touchdown without Delaney Walker out again. So this one is another one that is kind of looking a little gross, I suppose. Like, it's the running backs, and then you're kind of iffy on the passing game. Mm-hmm. Especially with the way Kyle Allen struggled last week. Obviously, he played the San Francisco 49ers. You can't really read too much into that matchup. But yeah, I think both Curtis Samuel and DJ Moore are startable. If you have better options over Corey Davis and AJ Brown, maybe you go that way, but those 2 maybe flex considerations. But like you said, Danny Amendola might be a better option. Deontay Johnson might be a better option. There seems to be better options than the Tennessee wide receivers, because even last week we saw Corey Davis in his first week with Tannehill get 6 targets for 80 yards and a touchdown. Last week he caught 2 for 9, something like that. Like, that's just how it's going to go with the Tennessee Titans. They're going to be a defense, run heavy offense. That's how they're going to win. So
by the way, for me, DJ Moore, quite a bit better play than Curtis Samuel. I mean, for one thing, Curtis Samuel's coming off of the injury. He is going to play. He is active, but he was a game time decision. And on top of that, I mean, DJ Moore has just kind of been the volume guy. You have to chase a touchdown with Curtis Samuel, and that's not something I want to do, especially against a defense that doesn't give a whole lot of that.
Well, but he's had 5 or more targets in basically every game this season, right?
Yeah.
4 or more targets. He had 4 in week 1, but since then it's 6 or more, including double digits last week against the San Francisco 49ers. So I get it with the injury. Maybe I'm just not as scared off of Curtis Samuel this week as you are.
Yeah, sounds like it. I'm pretty down on him this week.
All right, moving on. We have Chicago at Philadelphia, 43.5 over under. Philadelphia is giving 5 points. Or sorry, Chicago's giving 5 points. That's my bad. That makes more sense. A lot of good startable assets for Chicago this week. Maybe not so much. Every time we talk, like I have to put caveats on what I'm saying, because I'm not attacking these players, even though I will attack you later about them. Yeah. But yeah, I mean, the running game, Philadelphia's strength is the running against the run. So David Montgomery might be a flex play. He did have a great game last week, but he might come back down to earth a bit. So yeah, I mean, do you trust David Montgomery this week against Philadelphia, or are you just going with the pass game?
Yeah, mostly going to be the pass game. I mean, I think that David Montgomery he's kind of a low end running back too. It's just, I mean, chances are you've got better options. Mm-hmm. You know, I mean, there might even be some guys on waivers, and we just talked about Adrian Peterson. We talked about Frank Gore. Just the amount of volume that those guys are going to get. I would prefer that to David Montgomery. And there's still the angle here where Philadelphia can get up by enough. I mean, it's going to be tough to move the ball on this defense for sure, but they could definitely kind of force Chicago into a pass heavy game script.
And then in terms of the pass catchers, Allen Robinson, an obvious start here against a weak Philadelphia secondary. Anthony Miller's been getting more play of late, but I mean, are you trusting him this week? I actually like Taylor Gabriel this week a lot, because he had 4 targets for 57 yards last week against a better secondary than Philadelphia, and he could go for a couple big plays this week. This could be one of those Taylor Gabriel explosion games this week.
Yeah, I like that one. I mean, I'm not real big on either of them. I tend to agree with you. I'd have Taylor Gabriel over Anthony Miller, but I mean, both of them are kind of like in a deeper league. You're considering them at flex, but
right. And then I think
Samuel is a better start.
I think Taylor Gabriel is a boom. I mean, if you're needing a win and you need to go for it, Taylor Gabriel's not a bad play, but in DFS especially, he's a good GPP play this week because he could go for some big plays. FF Psychic in the chat brings up a good point. The running game the running defense for Chicago has not been good since Akeem Hicks has gone down. Last week they were fine. I mean, the Chargers didn't run all that much. They only ran the ball 12 times, but the previous weeks, Latavius Murray ran for 119 yards and 2 touchdowns. Josh Jacobs ran for 123 yards and 2 touchdowns. Who are you starting any of the Philadelphia running backs? Are you is one that you like? Do you like Jordan Howard more? Do you like Miles Sanders more this week?
I think Miles Sanders probably is the better start. Although I'm always a sucker for, the revenge game, which we've got here with Jordan Howard. But I mean, to me, it feels like a better game script for Miles Sanders. But they're both pretty close, and I think they're both kind of low end RB2 flex type guys.
Yeah, I think I agree with that. I mean, Jordan Howard has been surprising this season, and honestly, I just wonder if maybe Chicago regrets getting rid of Jordan Howard a little bit. Not to say that, I mean, David Montgomery can't be better in the long run, but this season he definitely hasn't been. I think I'm with Jordan Howard. I think he will get more of the volume here, but Miles Sanders is definitely more involved in the passing game. In terms of the Eagles pass catchers, Deshaun Jackson seems to be coming back this week. I don't really like any of the pass catchers this week. Alshon, you talk about revenge game, Alshon and Jordan Howard coming back to Chicago. I still don't like Alshon this week. I don't like maybe Deshaun Jackson's okay for a deep ball, but the pass defense has definitely been a lot better for Chicago than the run defense. So I'm really avoiding the pass catchers for Chicago or for Philadelphia if I can.
Yeah, I think so too. I mean, I think Alshon is kind of he's like a wide receiver 3 for me, kind of higher end, but yeah, he's wide receiver 3. Deshaun Jackson, they're both really close for me, actually. Kind of in the wide receiver 30 overall range. So I've got them back to back, in fact. So
there you go.
Yeah. So I think they're startable, but flip a coin as to which one.
All right. So here's another conundrum. The tight ends for Philadelphia, Zach Ertz has definitely been disappointing of late. Dallas Goedert's been taking touchdowns away. They're approaching each other in terms of snap share. Is there any? I think you have to go with Ertz this week just because of volume. But if Goddard steals a touchdown, I wouldn't be all that surprised that he outscores Ertz this week.
Yeah, like you said, the volume makes Zach Ertz looks like he's still top 5 for me now that you take out George Kittle for the week. So just on volume, but I think Dallas Goedert is kind of in a pinch. I think Dallas Goedert is startable just on the with a touchdown upside.
All right, moving on to our next game here. Minnesota at Kansas City. It's actually even. I don't know what the over-under is, but with Matt Moore playing, Pat Mahomes has been declared out for this game. With Matt Moore, they did not look bad, and I don't know how bad. I think the talent around the quarterback can definitely help lift a quarterback in turn. There's an argument to be made. Well, maybe it's the talent around Pat Mahomes and not Pat Mahomes. Shut up. Nobody can make the throw as Pat Mahomes can. But yeah, with Matt Moore didn't look bad last week. And you have Kelsey, you have Tyreek Hill, you have the 2 good pass catching running backs. Lest we forget Mecole Hardman, Sammy Watkins. So Matt Moore isn't a bad play this week against Minnesota. Now, Minnesota's defense has definitely been good this season, but with the weapons, like I said, around Matt Moore, it's going to be tough to shut down that offense. So if Matt Moore, especially in Superflex, Matt Moore is absolutely a QB2. Would you consider starting him this week in one QB leagues?
I could see it. Yeah, I could see a scenario where that happens. And part of it is we've got three fantasy relevant quarterbacks, high end fantasy quarterbacks on bye, and then Andy Dalton / Ryan Finley. So yeah, I mean, I think there's a very good chance that if you're streaming quarterback, or if you have Matt Ryan, Drew Brees, or Jared Goff, and you're kind of looking on waivers, Matt Moore is probably the best like plug and play type of guy that you're going to find. I mean, I would start him over. Jameis Winston's an easy target at this point. Sam Darnold, Phillip Rivers, those guys have tough enough matchups that I would prefer Matt Moore.
I think I agree there. And like I said, he's just, you're not going to shut down all of the weapons. So he's an okay start this week.
That Viking secondary, by the way, has not been what it's been in the past.
So. Which, I mean, I think Tyreek Hill is definitely is matchup proof just because of his skill set. He's so fast and he's so good, and he presents matchup problems all over the place. Travis Kelce, obviously matchup proof. Dude gets volume for days, every day. Sammy Watkins, though, do you start Sammy Watkins this week?
Let me see where I've got him ranked, because I don't think so. I think Tyreek Hill is kind of the main guy that I guess I've got Watkins at 34. So, which puts him again in that wide receiver 3 and flex range. It just is a little bit of a jumbled mess with, him and Demarcus Robinson, McCole Hardman, even Byron Pringle. Those guys just kind of, it's just this nebulous blob of catches and red zone targets. So it's tough to trust any one of those guys individually. In a best ball league, you'd love to just have that entire wide receiving core. But as far as, when you have to set a lineup, I don't know that I really want to try and figure out who it's going to be other than Tyreek Hill and Travis Kelce.
Right. And then with the running backs, it seems like McCoy is starting to take over a little bit, but Damian Williams is still getting significant snaps. Even Darrell Williams is getting some snaps here and there. Is there anybody that you really want starting for Kansas City in terms of the running game? I know that the strength of the Vikings defense right now is against the run. They've allowed the 6th fewest fantasy points to running backs over the past 5 weeks. They haven't allowed a 100-yard rusher since Aaron Jones in week 2. They've only allowed 2 double-digit fantasy games to running backs since week 2. They did give up 76 yards to Adrian Peterson last week, but the way that the snaps split here, I mean, actually last week, Damian Williams saw 25 to LaShawn McCoy's 23, and that had a lot to do with the fumble. Darrell Williams saw 9 snaps. Anthony Sherman saw 8, which he's the fullback. Even Darwin Thompson saw 2. That's kind of the snap breakdown here. So do you really, I think LaShawn McCoy's a sit this week because of the Minnesota Vikings defense, but they split the ball between basically LaShawn McCoy and Damian Williams pretty much 50-50, or the snap share at least. Are you starting any of these running backs?
No. I mean, in a deep maybe, like, I guess the settings don't matter too much. In a deeper league, LaShawn McCoy is probably a flex consideration, but I mean, some guys that we already talked about. I'd rather start David Montgomery. I'd rather start Devin Singletary. I'd rather start Jordan Howard. Those guys all have, for one thing, they should have better game script. That again, McCoy's angle would be in the passing game. And that's where he easily rises above the rest of the running backs on that depth chart. But it's even then, the in the passing game they spread it around way too much. The running game just isn't going to have the opportunities. There's just not much of a path for McCoy.
And even in the passing game, I mean, Damian Williams is somewhat involved in the passing game, so it's not like McCoy dominates those pass catching opportunities for the running backs.
Yeah, the five targets at running backs.
Yeah. On the other side, obviously Dalvin Cook is a must start. Kirk
number
Cousins,
1 this week.
Kirk Cousins is a very good start. He's been a lot better of late, and this is why we don't panic in fantasy football. Things change relatively quickly. Kirk Cousins was not good through the first 3 weeks, and then all of a sudden we're getting back 300-yard passing games. Even last week he had 285 yards. He just happened to not throw any touchdowns. Stephon Diggs has had 4 100-yard games in the last 5. Adam Thielen's back this week. So they're basically fully healthy in terms of the relevant offensive players for the Vikings. I'm starting everybody. I think this is going to be a relatively high-scoring game. That Kansas City secondary, well, it has been good against wide receivers, deceivingly good against wide receivers this season, which, I mean, if you look at it, they actually rank, I believe, in the top 10 against the pass in terms of they are number 4 in DVOA against the pass. Mm-hmm. So they've been deceptively good this season. But I think this Vikings offense is high powered enough to get through, and this is going to sound so weird, that Kansas City defense, that Stephon Diggs, Adam Thielen, Dalvin Cook, and Kirk Cousins are all very startable this week.
Yeah, absolutely. Diggs and Thielen are both wide receiver 1s for me. So, I mean, you could conceivably start both of them in the same lineup and be okay. It's not something that I love to do, but I think that they both are in line for enough volume. And Dalvin Cook just kind of softens everything up enough to kind of open it up. By the way, Alexander Mattison is probably even a flex consideration in this one. The Chiefs are bad against running backs.
Mm-hmm. I mean, I think the biggest issue for me with Mattison is he's just not involved in the pass game. So his ceiling is very limited. He may get seven carries for 50 some odd yards, and that's fantastic. But unless he gets into the end zone, not the best start, I suppose, just because of that limited ceiling.
Yeah, he's not great, but I think that he's fairly safe. To a point where, like I might consider him over Miles Sanders. Just based on the idea that he might get enough touches to actually, and maybe Jordan Howard too, for that matter. I mean, he might get enough touches to overcome both of those guys.
All right. Moving right along here. New York Jets at Miami. This is there's some really bad games this week.
Yeah.
New York Jets, obviously 3-point favorites. Over unders 40.5. I just don't think it's going to be a high scoring game. Darnold's a safe start. I think Demaryius Thomas is kind of taken over the wide receiver 1 role. Maybe Robbie Anderson gets a deep ball here and there. I mean, Crowder is going to get those underneath routes, but Demaryius Thomas has been heavily involved since coming back. And was he traded or? Yeah, he was traded to the Jets. He's had 9 over the past 4 weeks. He's had 9, 4, 9, and 5 targets for 47, 62, 42, and 63 yards. No touchdowns yet. That might change, but he's definitely been the most targeted and the most used wide receiver in this offense. So I think he's startable this week, obviously against a bad Miami defense. With Crowder and Anderson, are you taking a shot with them at all?
Anderson is a pretty good start to me. Wide receiver 23 for me. So I would still prefer Robbie Anderson. I still think that he's the number one. I know that Demarius is pretty safe. Kind of the big body chain mover type of guy, possession receiver type of guy. And then you still don't have Chris Herndon, and that's somebody who Sam Darnold targeted a lot last year. I think that Demarius kind of fits the same type of profile as Chris Herndon. So there's a little bit of a safety blanket element to that, but I still think Robbie Anderson is the top guy. And this Miami secondary was not good anyways, and now you also have Xavier Howard on IR.
Mm-hmm.
There's absolutely nobody to cover these guys. So this is almost like this turns into kind of 7-on-7 drills where you get to just open up the playbook and try everything you've got and build up that confidence. And I think there's an opportunity here for Darnold to Anderson to kind of wake up and become relevant again. So to me, Robbie Anderson is the play. I do think that you're right with Demarius as far as the volume making him kind of a flex, kind of a low end flex play.
Le'Veon Bell's a fantastic start this week. I think he has 85% of the running back touches this season. So the bell cow of bell cows this season. I just don't, first and foremost, Miami is terrible against running backs. They are allowing apologize as I look this up, the fourth most fantasy points to running backs on the season. 145 yards to James Conner last week in a touchdown, 118 to Adrian Peterson, 125 to Zeke, even 103 to Tony Pollard. So you get the idea. Le'Veon Bell is going to be heavily used. He's got to be an RB1 this week, maybe even a top 5 option this week in terms of running backs, just because of how much volume he gets and how bad Miami is.
Yeah, so just on paper, I've got him as running back 5. Just because you have to put everything aside and just look at the opportunity. And at Dolphins, that's just the best matchup possible for a running back. But I have to say, when you actually you kind of look at everything involved, kind of the psychology, I suppose. The trade deadline came and went. Le'Veon Bell almost got traded, and he knew it. He knows he almost went back to Pittsburgh. Yep. He knows that he's not particularly welcome there, that they didn't, Gase didn't want him. I don't know, man. I think that there's a chance here that, just the behind the scenes drama could, the wheels could really fall off this thing starting this week. I'm a little nervous about Le'Veon Bell going forward. I'm a little nervous about him today. In fact, it feels like this could be the type of, you like I said, you can kind of get Sam Darnold going in the right direction. You can get, fire up Robbie Anderson this week, and you don't necessarily need the running game. And I don't know. They could be headed for a divorce anyways. And I don't know. Just proceed with caution. That's all I'm saying. You have to start Lev Bell here, but I think,
I guess my thing is, who else are they going to give the ball to? They have Bilal Powell, who's 31 and has had 2 neck injuries.
Yep.
And then who? Jamal Adams, or not Jamal Adams, but the other Adams, Josh Adams.
Yeah, Ty Montgomery, I suppose. Yeah, but who are they going to give the ball to if they had managed to pull off a trade? Like, they were willing to go down that road. I guess
which in itself is.
It's weird. It's pretty crazy. But
Adam Gase is just. I can't with Adam Gase.
Yeah. All I'm saying is, start him this week. But, if he doesn't get going this week, then I think that we're in 5-alarm territory.
Yeah, fair enough. basically start all of the Miami side of the ball is relatively startable this week. The Jets have given up the 6th most fantasy points to running back. So Mark Walton's a good start or an okay start this week. I don't know if you can expect a ton, but he's an okay start this week. With Ryan Fitzpatrick, the wide receivers are okay starts this week. Both Devontae Parker and Preston Williams are okay starts this week. The Jets have given up the 8th most fantasy points to wide receivers on the season. Last week, they gave up 20 and 19, or basically 20 to each of Chris Conley and DJ Chark. The previous week, they gave up 13.7 and 13.6 to Julian Edelman and Philip Dorsett. So they're not good against wide receivers. And I think that both Parker and Williams are startable flex options this week. And no, FF Psychic, I don't know what's going on with Albert Wilson. They have
he got in the end zone.
In each of the last 3 games, they've had scripted plays for him in each of their first snaps. But after that, like, he just doesn't get targeted, and it's wild. Like, he is their most, I guess, dynamic player on that side of the ball, and they just don't use him. Before I forget, we skipped over a start sit question here from Nate the Great. Start Allen Robinson or Stephon Diggs?
Diggs by quite a bit for me.
Yeah, it's not quite a bit for me because Allen Robinson still is putting up numbers with Mitchell Trubisky, and the secondary they're facing is far worse than Kansas City. So I think I'm still leaning Diggs, but I don't think you can go wrong with either one here. So
yeah, they're both startable, but I've got Allen Robinson as a wide receiver 2, Diggs as a wide receiver 1.
Well, there you go. So back to the Dolphins. I mean, I don't want to start either of Parker or Williams, but in these bye weeks, sometimes you have to go that direction. Are you okay with starting either or both of Devontae Parker and Preston Williams this week?
Definitely Williams. Parker is is still a little hard to trust for me. And now, you take away Kenyon Drake, get him off the roster right before the trade deadline. It kind of opens up some shorter stuff. So this is why, this is me just digging my own grave on top of the hill. But Albert Wilson, to me, fills a void left by Kenyon Drake with some of the short passing. You can use him as a little bit of a short yardage type of guy with bubble screens and stuff. So I would prefer Albert Wilson to Devontae Parker. Neither one of them is they're not really in the flex consideration for me unless you're super desperate. You'd have to be pretty decimated.
Yeah, I agree with that. All right, on to our next game here. Indianapolis at Pittsburgh. Pittsburgh is favored. Sorry, Indianapolis is favored by 1. So it's basically a push at this point. Over-under is 43. For Indianapolis, I don't really like anybody, believe it or not. This Pittsburgh defense has been a lot better of late. Obviously, their strength was against the run. On the season, they are allowing the 9th fewest fantasy points to running backs. Over the past 5 weeks, they're allowing the fewest fantasy points to running backs. Haven't allowed a double-digit fantasy point game. Well, sorry, they allowed 12.9 fantasy points to Mark Ingram in week 5. Haven't allowed any in the last 2 weeks. And they haven't allowed any fantasy point or any running back to get over 20 fantasy points. I don't like Marlon Mack this week. So I just think honestly thinking like Mark Walton over Marlon Mack type. I think this is such a poor matchup for Marlon Mack this week that I think he's a must sit. And then even in the secondary, though, the secondary has been a lot better of late, especially after they acquired Minka Fitzpatrick. They're giving up the 9th fewest fantasy points to wide receivers over the last 5 weeks. They just haven't been giving up big games whatsoever, really, since they acquired Minka Fitzpatrick. So I don't like any of the Colts this week. Do you have any different opinions?
No, not really. I mean, T.Y. Hilton's out. I even Jacoby Brissett is so. I got one for you: Jacoby Brissett or Matt Moore.
Matt Moore.
Yep. Jacoby Brissett or Sam Darnold.
Darnold.
Yeah, I think that's where I'm at too, and that's kind of the that's right around that line for me between QB1 and QB2. So. In a if you're in Superflex or 2 QB, you can still start Jacoby Brissett, but in 1 QB, I think that there are better options.
Yeah, I mean, they did give up 24 points to Phillip Rivers. Ryan Fitzpatrick had 19, but
those guys have people to throw to.
That's true too. But I mean, even then, like they've intercepted the ball 7 times over the last 3 weeks.
Mm-hmm.
So they're producing turnovers. That's the biggest issue for me. You can't really trust the touchdowns, but you can trust that Pittsburgh is creating turnovers. So yeah, I just and then the 2 tight ends are splitting touches, splitting snaps. You just cannot trust anybody on the Colts this week. Like I said, they're almost all like not even flex worthy at this point. I get it. Marlon Mack's going to get volume, but like I said, the Steelers have allowed the fewest fantasy points to running backs over the last 5 weeks. And it's only 14.5 fantasy points per game. And we know Nyheim Hines is going to be involved. So it's just, they don't give up yards on the ground. They did give up like 62 to Joe Mixon, 79 to Raheem Mostert. But even then, like, it's just, I can't trust anybody on the Colts side of the ball.
So Marlon Mack is a high-end RB2 for me. So I think he's still it's just a volume thing. I mean, they've got to move the ball somehow. We kind of talked about this last week, but you start with the assumption that somehow they're going to move the ball, somehow they're going to score points. So write a story. How do they do it? The only ways I can really see this, it's Marlon Mack with his 20 touches. And, maybe it's Eric Ebron in the red zone. So I think that makes those guys startable. Just the fact that they've seemed like the most likely candidates for, yards and or a score. So both of those guys are startable for me, Marlon Mack, Eric Ebron, but I don't feel great about either of them. I'll concede that.
Gardner Minshew's struggling a little bit.
Yeah.
And then for Pittsburgh, James Conner's out. Jalen Samuels looks like he's going to get a ton of volume this week. We did have a question earlier on in the chat. I just skipped it. In a 16-team league, does Trey Edmonds get a decent role today with both Snell and Connor out, and Jalen Samuels just returning from injury?
Man, probably not. I mean, not one that you could really count on, I don't think. They legitimately could just put all of this on Jalen Samuels. I mean, you probably get James Conner back next week. Benny Snell might not be far behind. So, there's kind of no reason to worry about preserving Jalen Samuels for next week. I mean, Just ride him.
Yeah, I think it's definitely a Jalen Samuels week. I think he's going to get 90% of the touches in that backfield. So I do not think Trey Edmonds is startable at all. Juju Smith-Schuster, obviously a good start. Deontay Johnson, we already talked about. Decent start. He's been getting, I said decent there. Now I know it. Okay.
Good. Now you're going to hear it every time.
He's an okay start. Is that better? He's been pretty involved with Mason Rudolph and really just over the past few weeks. He's had, I mean, beyond week 6, he has had 4 or more targets in every game except for week 6. From week 3 on, 6, 6, 8, 2, 7. So he's had some very good games. So I don't mind Deontay Johnson as a start this week either as a flex. The secondary for Indianapolis has not been that good. I suppose they've been middling at best. They've allowed the 14th most fantasy points over the last 5 weeks. Last week, they definitely shut down that offense. I think that's more of a Joe Flacco thing than anything. But the previous week to that, DeAndre Hopkins and Kenny Stills had 100 yards. Byron Pringle had a 100-yard game. McCall Hardman had a 79-yard game. So they give up God damn it, good games to wide receivers. So yeah, I mean, all 3. I don't think you can trust James Washington, but he's had 6 targets in each of the last 2 games. So between Deontay Johnson and James Washington, obviously Deontay Johnson, and then I think those are really the only 2 pass catchers you trust for Pittsburgh. Mason Rudolph's an okay start as well this week.
Yeah, that's about right. Deontay Johnson, I'm still not. He's pretty boom bust, so I'm not quite as high on him. It sounds like, but I mean, we for flex considerations. I mean, we've talked about some guys who I like better, but I mean, it's in pretty good matchups. Preston Williams and Cole Beasley. So. But I'll say this: I would start Deontay Johnson over Terry McLaurin.
There you go. I mean that speaks a lot to Terry McLaurin's matchup and his quarterback. But yeah, Deontay Johnson has been involved, and he's not a bad start week in, week out. All right, moving on. Detroit at Oakland. I think this is going to be the barn burner of barn burners this week. It's 2 bad defenses, 2 bad secondaries, really. Over the last 5 weeks, I'm looking at the wrong thing here. On the season, the Raiders have given up the 6th most fantasy points to wide receivers. The Detroit Lions have given up the 9th most to wide receivers. To quarterbacks, Oakland has given up the most fantasy points to QBs. Detroit's given the 7th most to running backs. Detroit has given up the most fantasy points to running backs. Oakland's actually been better against the run, but I don't think that Detroit's going to be running the ball anyway because it's Ty Johnson and J.D. McKissick. So I think this is going to be throw all the time game. I mean, Josh Jacobs will get his run, but Stafford and Carr might be the top 2 quarterbacks this week. That's how bad this matchup is, or how good the matchup is, how bad the defenses are. Galladay's a must start. Tyrell Williams is a must start. Waller's a must start. I like TJ Hawkinson this week because against tight ends, neither team has been good against tight ends this season, but especially of late. I don't know. I mean, even like guys like Marvin Hill aren't terrible starts this week just because of how bad these secondaries are. And we've seen Marvin Hill get or is it Hall? Sorry, Marvin Hall, not Hill. Yep. Marvin Hall. We've seen Marvin Hall get like long touchdowns thrown to him this season. Marvin Jones is a good start. Name a pass catcher and you'll have to probably go down the depth chart to say, no, I'm not starting him. But I'll do my spiel here on Hunter Renfrow real quick. The Lions have been very, very susceptible to slot receivers. They've given up 25.3 fantasy points to Larry Fitzgerald, 17.8 to Keenan Allen, 25 to Nelson Aguilar, 16.5 to Alan Lazard, and he was playing a majority of the slot that week for Green Bay. They gave up a combination of combined 23.5 to Adam Thielen and Olabisi Johnson, who had played the slot after Adam Thielen went down. And then last week they gave up 16.5 to Golden Tate. They've almost given up double-digit fantasy points to slot receivers in every week and over 16 fantasy points to slot receivers in every week, except for one. And I think that was against Kansas City, who I don't really know who their slot wide receiver is. They move around so much. So that's why, and Hunter Renfrow, yes, he did have a 65-yard broken play touchdown last week that that counted for the majority of his stats, but he caught four of four for 88 yards and 1 touchdown last week, his best week as a professional football player. While you can't be like, oh yeah, Hunter Renfrow's a must start this week, as a flex option, I don't mind Hunter Renfrow this week.
Yeah, I think that's fair. Yeah. So to me, Danny Amendola is I mean, kind of everything you said, but just on the other side of the ball. And I would far prefer Amendola. I mean, he's a mid wide receiver 2 for me.
Yeah.
But he's kind of my plug and play. He's my Hunter Renfrow for the week, and you know, it's all. The big thing is, you know, with Detroit's running game. Basically since Kerryon Johnson went down and all of a sudden it turned into, you know, kind of this committee approach. You don't know who the top running back is. They kind of went into this a little bit of a West Coast type offense, you know, heavy on short passing. So, you know, Danny Amendola's snap count doubled the second that Kerryon Johnson went down. And he's had at least 8 targets each of the last 2 weeks without Kerryon Johnson. He running primarily out of the slot, and where, you know, Oakland is extremely susceptible. So to me, Danny Amendola is that guy. But I mean, I think the bottom line here is like this is your DFS matchup right here. This just stack the hell out of this thing because.
And it's on both sides of the ball. Like I have 2 lineups this week. I'm starting one with a Oakland stack and one with a Lions stack. And then I have pass catchers from both sides of the ball in both of those lineups. So I think this is going to be a barn burner. I think I'm taking the over because it's the over is or over under is 50.5. I'm taking the over. These secondaries are so bad.
Yeah, there's no defense here. Yeah.
So yeah, I mean, basically start any and everybody you can think of at this point. I mean, obviously not the DeAndre Washingtons, and he might not even be a bad start this week because of how bad Detroit's run defense has been. But on to Tampa Bay at Seattle. The over-under is 51, the highest of the week. Seattle is giving 6 points. I like both sides of the ball again. I mean, the one iffy one that I'm iffy on is Chris Carson, because Tampa Bay ranks first in DVOA against the run. They've given up the 3rd fewest fantasy points to running backs. That is their strength. Now, I don't expect Brian Schottenheimer to adjust because Brian Schottenheimer doesn't adjust, but so I would expect a large volume for Chris Carson once again, and which makes him startable, but you need to temper your expectations on Chris Carson's ceiling this week. He may not get that 100-yard threshold. He might just do 20 for 20 rushes for 60 yards on a touchdown, but that's startable. That's a start RB2 in a given week. And while he's not matchup proof, he's pretty close just because of volume.
Yeah, it makes the running game on the other side a little tough to trust too, because I mean, while you know, Tampa Bay is top 3 against the run, in fewest fantasy points allowed to running backs. Seattle's still top 10, and it's already a pretty murky situation, you know, with Ronald Jones, Peyton Barber, and then Dare. But you factor in, first of all, a bad matchup, and then very likely negative game script. I want nothing to do with the Tampa Bay running backs, any of them. Chris Carson, yeah, I mean, I think that it does knock him down a little bit, kind of in the RB2 range. And there are better starts. I mean, Jalen Samuels is a guy that we already talked about. And I think that he's a better start this week. I think he's got a better game script with just as much volume.
Yeah, I definitely agree. I mean, Ronald Jones seems to be taking over, but Peyton Barber's still gotten touches. Dare Ogunbowale is getting touches in the pass game. It's a kind of a gross situation against a good defense. So yeah, definitely an avoid for those running backs if you can. DK Metcalf's a good start. Tyler Lockett's a must start at this point. DK has the most end zone targets on the season. He only has 4 touchdowns though. So there's definitely some regression coming there. But I think he's a very good start this week. Tampa Bay's, I mean, as we talk about their running game or their run defense, their pass defense is basically the exact opposite. They've given the most fantasy points to 2 wide receivers over the past 5 weeks. So, I mean, again, Schottenheimer, I don't expect him to adjust very much here, but Russell Wilson and that passing offense is going to probably have a game, even to a point where, and I think, is Ed Dixon back this week?
It sure seems like so. MFL has him like on.
Oh no, it's not. He's not active.
Okay,
so
because MFL had a projection for him, but still had the IR designation. So it was. It's like, wait, so what's happening?
The point of that was, I mean, I'm going to say this. I'm not opposed to starting Luke Wilson this week. This week. He had 70% of the snaps last week. And Tampa Bay's given up the most fantasy points to tight ends, maybe not on the season, but over the last 5 weeks. And they're second on the season. They've given up they gave up 19.8 last week to Jonnu Smith, 14.1 to Jared Cook, 15.4 to Gerald Everett, 23.3 to Ingram. Olsen had 17, Kittle had 13.4. Even like last week with Anthony Ferkser had 7.3.
Yeah.
So I'm not opposed because of how gross tight ends are this week. I'm not opposed to starting Luke Wilson. That's how bad the pass defense for Tampa Bay has been.
Yeah, to a point where, Wilson is startable. I mean, you've got to be kind of desperate, to be honest. But people are in that situation where you're looking on waivers. You could do far worse than Luke Wilson. The only guy that I would where I would draw the line, don't start Josh Gordon yet. It's way too cute to.
Yeah, but is he dressing this today?
I have no idea, but if
I can't imagine that he's dressing. But yeah, good point. If he is, not a good start. It's DK Metcalf and Tyler Lockett. I mean, even David Moore and Jerron Brown are okay flex options at this point.
Yeah.
And then the other side, you're obviously starting Evans, obviously starting Godwin. I think Cameron Brate's a good start this week. The Seahawks have not been good against tight ends. They have given up the 7th most over the past 5 weeks. Gave up 18.5 to Austin Hooper, 13.7 to Ricky Seals-Jones, 20.6 to Gerald Everett over the past 4 games. So, yeah, I mean, and Cameron Brate gets red zone targets. He gets end zone targets, and he's kind of one of he's one of Winston's favorite I guess safety blankets. So yeah, I mean, Cameron Brate in this tight end landscape right now, good start. And then I think you need to start both quarterbacks. I mean, regardless of how we feel about Jameis Winston, he is still a top 10 fantasy quarterback. He's going to chuck the ball.
Yeah.
But he ranks, he is top 10 in terms of fantasy points among
okay.
I'm not saying like moving forward, like you
I thought you meant like today he's a top 10.
No. I'm saying like the guy puts up fantasy points because he chucks the ball.
Okay.
And they're gonna have to throw the ball a lot this game. So yeah, Evans, Godwin are good starts. Winston's a good start. So yeah, a lot of
I don't think Winston's a good start, but I mean, a super flex, sure, but I mean, he's mid range RB2 for me.
QB2, but I mean, why is that?
QB2?
Like, let's take your bias out of this. Why is that?
Well, it's about the Seahawks are top 10 against quarterbacks.
They're what?
They're 22nd, I believe. Do I have that wrong or what?
Very wrong.
Where are they
They've
at?
given up the ninth most fantasy points to QBs the last 5 weeks.
Oh, I've got 11th, I guess. But yeah,
so they have 11th on the season, but they gave up 460 yards last week to Matt Schaub.
Yeah, they also turned the ball over though.
That's fine. Again,
and
going to throw interceptions. He's just going to throw for 300 plus yards and multiple touchdowns.
Yeah, but that gets negated by those interceptions.
No, not when it's it's
yeah, it does. Okay,
let's look at now. We're gonna have
if you get 4
argument here because you're an idiot. And
if
yes,
you get 4 points, you get 4 points for a passing touchdown, not counting the yards. You get -2 for an interception. If he throws 2 touchdowns and 3 interceptions, I mean, you netted 2 points.
Okay, but he also throws for 300 plus yards almost every game.
Okay, how much is that in terms
12.
of scoring? So, okay, so you got 14 points from him. You don't think Sam Darnold and Matt Moore can outscore that?
So what do you think he did last week?
Oh, I have no idea.
He threw for 2 touchdowns and 2 interceptions, 301 yards. How many fantasy points did he have?
So that's, I mean, you just said 12.
How many fantasy points did he have?
So that would be 16.
He had 28.4.
How's that with only 300 yards?
Yeah.
2 touchdowns, 2 interceptions. So the 2 interceptions wipe out one of those touchdowns.
Well, he had 53 yards on the ground, but since week 3, he's had 31.3, 35.2, 19.5, 24.1, 28.4 fantasy points.
Yeah. Okay. I mean,
he is a QB9 right now.
I don't know what scoring we're talking about there. Like, what kind of bonuses do you have to get in order to jump from 16 to 28?
That I don't know.
I mean, there's
according to FF today, he is 9th in fantasy points per game.
Mm-hmm.
And it's because he chucks the ball. Like very rarely. I mean, if he's playing the New England Patriots, if he's playing the San Francisco 49ers, probably the Denver Broncos, he is a sit. Other than that, I can't see sitting him ever. Yeah, because he's not a good quarterback by any means. That's not the argument here. He's a good fantasy quarterback because he's forced to throw the ball so much.
Yeah,
and he's had over 300 passing yards in 4 of the last 5 games.
I mean, I can give you the reason. Part of the reason that he's a sit for me is just the guys ahead of him. I mean, Russell Wilson, Dak Prescott, Matthew Stafford, Aaron Rodgers, Derek Carr, Josh Allen, Kirk Cousins, Lamar Jackson, Tom Brady, Matt Moore, Sam Darnold, Phillip Rivers. Those are all better starts to me.
I don't agree about Sam Darnold or Phillip Rivers for that matter.
Sam Darnold against Miami.
Nope.
You'd rather start Jameis.
Yep.
You can start as wide receivers. That's fine.
No, I'm saying I would start Jameis over Sam Darnold this week.
Oh, I mean, go for it, but yeah, I wouldn't.
But you have an inherent bias against Jameis Winston.
Well, but I'm putting that aside. I mean, it's not just that. It, like I said, it's the fact that to me these guys have better matchups. I mean, Seattle's only given up in the last 4 games. They've only given up 3 passing touchdowns. And that's kind of what you're hoping for Jameis. And, again, bias aside, like forget about the fact that I believe he's going to turn the ball over enough to negate any touchdowns he does get. It's tough to score on this defense. It's tough to throw into the end zone.
I don't even agree with that though. Since week 4, they've given up 20.8, 23.9, 26, 24.8, 27 fantasy points.
Okay, you can get yards. But I mean, we're looking for touchdowns.
But
again,
I mean,
that's
what did I just tell you? He's thrown for over 300 yards in 4 of the last 5 games. They have to throw. And we just talked about the running backs not being good starts this week.
okay. But again, I don't care about yardage nearly as much as the ability to throw you can make up for a lack of yardage with a touchdown.
Yeah.
It's so much faster to get to fantasy points and so much easier to get. It's a clear path to fantasy production with the ability to throw touchdowns, and it hasn't been happening the last few weeks against Seattle.
I mean, we have to move on here. We can't stay on this. I'm just saying that Jameis Winston's almost a must start every week because of his having to throw for 50 goddamn times a game.
Yeah, but I think you can still play matchup. To me, he's not a rubber stamp starter. No, he's not in the conversation with guys like Russell Wilson.
No, I agree with that. But I mean, again, yes, you can play matchups, but unless the matchup is very poor, I'm saying there's no reason that you should be sitting him.
Okay, again, so Russell Wilson, Dak Prescott, Matthew Stafford, Aaron Rodgers, Derek Carr, Josh Allen, Kirk Cousins, Lamar Jackson, Tom Brady. Any of those that you disagree with?
Not necessarily. I don't know if I love Tom Brady. I don't know if I love Josh Allen, but I could see starting Jameis over them this week.
Okay, so I listed 10 guys there. I'm assuming you would have started Deshaun Watson or Gardner Minshew.
Probably not Gardner Minshew, no.
Over Jameis Winston?
Nope.
Okay. So I mean, he barely makes it into your QB1s. He doesn't quite. He's not there for me.
I mean, barely. He is a QB1 for me this week.
So I mean, based off of what we just did, he would have been your QB12.
Well, he would have been no, because it was like QB 8 to 10.
What? No.
As I said, I probably would have started him Jameis over Allen and Brady this week. We're moving on. I'm done with this conversation. You hate him. I don't hate him. It's fine. We have a question in the chat. Should I play Devontae? I'm assuming Adams. Of course, it's Adams. Quit being an idiot. If my only backup plan would be Amendola, yes. It's Devontae Adams. You don't sit Devontae Adams if he's playing. It sounds like he's playing.
Yeah, try and get them both into your lineup, though. I mean, yeah, it sounds like, if you're talking about a backup plan, it sounds like you might have some wiggle room there because those are both wide receiver, top 20 wide receivers for me this week.
Yep. Next game here, Cleveland at Denver. Don't like anything here, really. I don't like anything for Cleveland except for Nick Chubb. Nick Chubb at this point is a must start every single week. We've seen him hurt good run defenses. Nick Chubb is one of the best runners in the game. So he's a must start. I think Baker's is sit. I think OBJ is just on volume alone is probably okay, but I don't love it. I think Jarvis Landry's a sit. And then everybody else on that Browns offense is just not good.
I benched Beckham in one league.
Did you?
For Mark Walton at flex.
And the only reason it's hard for me to sit OBJ, but the Broncos have given up the fewest fantasy points on the season to wide receivers, I believe. And there's just the way that the Browns are playing right now and the way the Broncos defense is playing, there's better options. I mean, starting Amendola over OBJ, you should be doing that. There's better options out there. So really the only one that I like on that side is Nick Chubb. The only one I like on the other side is Cortland Sutton. Even with Ward and Greedy Williams back there, the Browns have not been fantastic against wide receivers this season. Over the past 5 weeks, they've given up the 10th most fantasy points. Last week, they gave up 27.5 to Julian Edelman. I know that's not Cortland Sutton, but they gave up 3 double-digit fantasy games to the Seattle wide receivers. So, Sutton's going to get enough volume that I think Sutton's a good start. Everybody else I don't like. Phillip Lindsay and Royce Freeman aren't actually terrible starts because Cleveland's not good against the run. They've given the 6th most fantasy points over the past 5 weeks, but they cap each other's ceiling. So while they're both involved in the passing game, which I think they will be heavily involved with Brandon Allen, I think there's going to be a lot of short to intermediate passes with Allen at quarterback. So I think as flexes, Royce Freeman and Phillip Lindsay are okay as well.
Yeah, that's and that pretty much covers it. I mean, there's again nobody else that I'm particularly interested in this matchup.
Basically, any game that Denver's involved in is going to be relatively gross.
Yeah, especially now that you're talking about Brandon Allen and until we finally get to see Drew Lock.
Yes.
I'm not hopeful, but I'm looking forward to at least getting to see what we've got there.
Friend of the show, Kyle Sinra in the chat asking who he should start in Scott Fishbowl. DeMarcus Robinson, no. Zach Pascal or MVS?
Give me Pascal.
Yeah, I think Pascal because of volume. T.Y. Hilton's out. Basically, Pascal and Chester Rogers are the 2 viable options in that pass game. And I think Pascal is probably the number 1 wide receiver today.
Yeah. In Czar Kingdom, I'm taking Michael Gallup over OBJ.
Oh, yeah. Me too. They play New York. The Giants' secondary has not been good. Gallup went off for 20-plus points in week 1. A lot better matchup this week. And honestly, equivalent production, really, if you think about it this season. So, yeah, definitely Gallup for me. All right, Green Bay at LA. Over-under is 47.5. Green Bay is giving 3.5 points. So Aaron Rodgers has had back-to-back good games for the first time this season.
Thank you.
I had to say that.
Yeah, you did.
Devontae Adams sounds like he's going to be playing, so obviously you must start Devontae Adams.
He's going to draw Casey Hayward coming off a turf toe. So, again, must start is maybe a little much for me.
Well, but I mean, do we view him as a matchup proof type wide receiver?
Generally, yes. Coming off an injury, I don't know about it. That's a little too much working against him.
I get it. I mean, they still haven't done great at shutting down number 1 wide receivers, though. I mean, Allen Robinson did okay. Corey Davis had 20 fantasy points. Cortland Sutton had 19 fantasy points. Devontae Parker had 17. Stills, Hopkins, and Fuller all had double-digit fantasy points. Kenny Golladay had 25.7. T.Y. Hilton at 28.7, though. That T.Y. Hilton one largely from the slot, so I don't think Casey Hayward goes into the slot. So I don't think it's as bad of a matchup as we think. So I'm starting Devontae Adams with confidence, I think, this week.
Yeah, I am too. I just think that there's a chance that you've got better options. I mean, DK Metcalf, Tyrell Williams, Michael Gallup, those are all guys I would start over Devontae Adams. And there's a chance that, you could have a roster makeup that has, a true wide receiver 1 plus those 3 guys. And, in that case, yeah, I'm going to let Adams take a week.
All right. A little bit of a fiery take there from John. Starting both of the Packers running backs, both have been extremely good despite John's hatred of Jamal Williams. Both have been very, very good this season.
Yeah, that one's pretty personal. It's Aaron Jones is so good.
I know. I know he is.
Aaron Jones has to be in the conversation right now for NFL MVP, and yet we still have to. Yeah, of course. Look at what he did last week, and tell me that those aren't MVP type numbers.
So we're talking about like Christian McCaffrey,
yes,
Russell Wilson.
Yes, I mean Russell Wilson. Russell Wilson right now is the MVP. But Aaron Jones, yeah, I mean, you've got a short list of guys who all get consideration, and yeah, Aaron Jones is in that conversation. He has to be.
Iffy at best. But the Chargers have been very, very bad against running backs. Let's list off some stats from the past 4 weeks. 114 yards to Phillip Lindsay in a touchdown. Royce Freeman in that same game had 61 yards. James Conner had 41 yards and a touchdown, along with 78 yards receiving and a touchdown. Benny Snell had 75 yards in that game. Derrick Henry had 22 for 90 and a touchdown. Last week, David Montgomery actually had his breakout, 135 yards and a touchdown, along with 4 or 5 catches. They're bad against the running game, and both Jamal Williams and Aaron Jones have been heavily involved in this offense, so both are very startable this week. I think Lazard's an okay start. I think he's become the wide receiver 2 for Green Bay. MVS and Geronimo Allison.
Definitely not interested in Allison. At this point, he's kind of a red zone threat, and that's about it. And they've got plenty of different ways to punch it in. MVS, I mean, you're kind of chasing a long touchdown. And you're certainly not going to get volume from him. Yeah, I'm not super interested. I mean, in a deep enough league with enough flex spots, sure. But yeah, Alan Lazard, I would take over all those guys. Jake Kumaro even is in that conversation, which all that does is just drag all of them down. It just muddies the water that much more. Yeah. So kind of what we talked about with Kansas City, where you don't want to try and figure that situation out. Just if you can avoid it, just avoid it entirely.
Yep. Jimmy Graham is a sit this week. The Chargers have not given up a lot of fantasy points to tight ends this season. Here's another one from Kyle Sendra, MVS or Curtis Samuel. Curtis Samuel for me. I know that John had talked about not liking Curtis Samuel's matchup this week, but
yeah, I don't love Curtis Samuel this week, but I'll still take him over MVS.
And then on the other side of the ball for Los Angeles, are you starting Phillip Rivers this week? I think you said you had him in the QB1.
Yeah, he's kind of low end QB1, high end QB2 discussion for me. So, yeah, I think that he's startable. Not a in one QB. He's not a must start guy, but yeah. I would take him over Jameis.
Keenan Allen, a must start this week. Well, maybe not must start, but he's a start this week. The Packers, the last 5 weeks have not been good against wide receivers. I don't think they really have a slot corner that you can really trust.
Yeah, it's Kevin King, and that's a plus matchup for Keenan Allen. So
right. Yeah,
he's still a strong start. Mike Williams is the one who draws Jair Alexander.
Yeah, I don't like Mike Williams this week. I haven't really liked him most of the season just because with Hunter Henry back, he gets a lot of those red zone targets taken away. So you need to trust on a deep ball or deep balls for Mike Williams, which are, his specialty, those 50-50 balls, but at the same time, I'm not trusting that. Plus, he is probably wide or pass catcher 4 on that team. You have Keenan Allen, you have Hunter Henry, and you have Austin Eckler. Speaking of Austin Eckler, I think he is a must start basically every week because of his ability in the pass game. The Packers have been a lot better against running backs of late, though they did give up 124 yards to Josh Jacobs in week 7 last week. Not too bad. Gave up 40 yards to LaShawn McCoy before that fumble, 30 yards to Damian Williams. But I think I'm okay with starting both Melvin Gordon and Austin Eckler. Ken Wisenhunt was fired, so we'll see. Or was that last week?
No, that was this week. That was just a couple days ago.
So we'll see exactly how that goes. We'll see who is more involved in the run among the running backs, but I expect it to still be pretty even split. Maybe maybe it hasn't even been that even in terms of split. Gordon just looks like a pile of garbage. No, it has been. So Eckler had 24 to Gordon's 25. The previous week, it was 38 to 34, 28 to 37. So it seems to be about a 50-50 split at this point in terms of snap share. Gordon's going to get most of the carries, Eckler most of the passes. I still expect them to be both startable. I like, obviously, Eckler more because of the pass catching ability.
Yeah, definitely agree. They're back to back for me at 17 and 18.
Okay.
So, kind of higher end RB2.
Was hoping that Gordon would be traded this past week to somebody like Detroit. Didn't happen, so we're going to have to deal with this the rest of the season. Austin Eckler is still a fantastic option despite Gordon being there. Let's rush through these last two real quick. And by the way, Hunter Henry must start every week at this point.
Correct.
New England at Baltimore. I don't love it for the running game. I don't like Mark Ingram this week, though I think volume is there that he will be okay as a flex or back end RB2. Do not like Michelle because he is not involved in the pass game. Baltimore has been very good against the run of late. Let me look this up real quick. I apologize. They have given up the 10th fewest fantasy points to running backs over the past 5 weeks, but they don't give up a lot on the ground. Nick Chubb is the only one that's really gouged them on the ground. Every other running back has gotten 65 or less yards on the ground. It's the pass catchers that kind of hurt you for the Ravens, or if you get a touchdown. So unless Michelle gets a touchdown, I just don't expect him to have a good game. James White's an okay option because of the pass catching. So I'm sitting Michelle this week. Julian Edelman's obviously a good option. I don't know about Dorsett. I don't know about Sanu. And then a lot of people will say, well, I mean, Lamar Jackson's facing New England Patriots, who I believe are number 1 against quarterbacks, maybe number 2 against quarterbacks this season. But Lamar Jackson, because of his rushing floor, makes him an okay start every week.
It's probably the best quarterback that
yes.
New England has seen as well so far.
So not a lot of options to love here. I think it might be a little bit of a slog. But yeah, I mean, the quarterbacks are fine. Brady and Lamar Jackson. I like Mark Andrews on the Ravens side. I like Ingram on the Ravens side. Maybe not the best options. So I think they'll be startable. You're just not going to get the ceiling from those two. And then I really only like Edelman on the Patriots side.
Yeah, I mean, it's a James White game script. I think that Baltimore is going to be able to move the ball and going to be able to put up points and, force New England to kind of abandon the run, go with a little bit more of a pass heavy approach. So yeah, it becomes a James White game script. So I he's an RB2 for me, but yeah, I mean, not a lot here to really trust.
Right. And with, who's the number 1 cornerback for Marlon Humphreys and now Marcus Peters there, it's a much more formidable secondary for Baltimore than to start the season. So it's just hard to trust Sanu and Dorsett this week. I'm sure Dorsett will get plenty of targets, but yeah, since they acquired Peters, the Ravens just aren't giving a ton of points to wide receivers. And then our final game of the week, Dallas at New York. Dallas is giving 7.5 points. The over-under is 48. Start Gallup, start Cooper, start Dak, start Zeke. So basically start everybody. Do not start Witten. The Giants, besides week 1, I believe, have been extremely good against tight ends. They're allowing the second fewest fantasy points over the last 5 weeks. Now, they haven't faced a gauntlet by any means. TJ Hawkinson, Charles Clay, Ryan Izzo, Kyle Rudolph, Vernon Davis. So they're not facing a gauntlet of tight ends, but they're just not giving up fantasy points. And Witten is probably the pass catcher at best for Dallas. So he's kind of the only sit I really have for the Cowboys. Even Randall Cobb is a good start this week.
Yeah, totally agree there. Nothing to add.
And then on the other side, Dallas, or for New York,
Not
what do you
much to like.
yeah, what do you think about Daniel Jones? So he's basically sandwiched a bunch of mediocre games with two monster games.
Yeah. So kind of a mid to low QB2 for me. And now we find out Sterling Shepard is going to miss another game. So I mean, he's throwing to the tight ends, Ingram and Ellison, and then it's like Darius Slayton and Golden Tate, of course. So I mean, it's not great weapons, not a very good matchup. Um, yeah, I think that there might be a little bit of a floor there for him. So I think he's safe enough that you could start him in a super flex, but it's not a great matchup.
Right. Obviously Saquon is a must start every week.
Yep.
Don't mind Golden Tate this week. Not a lot of good. I don't think there's a good slot corner for Dallas. Tate's been getting a ton of targets. Evan Ingram's pretty much a must start. If you want to talk about another concentrated offense, it's New York. You have Saquon, you have Evan Ingram, and you have Golden Tate right now, and not much else. Don't like Darius Slayton this week. The secondary for the Cowboys has been very good over the last 5 games, allowing the 4th fewest fantasy points to wide receivers. Do give up fantasy points to slot receivers. Jamison Crowder, 15.8. Well, maybe not. Maybe that was just the one. But still, Golden Tate's getting enough volume that he's a good start this week as well.
Yeah, I'm trying to figure out. We don't have time. I was going to try and see if the starting slot corner for Dallas was actually going to play or not. Anthony Brown. It would bump Golden Tate up into the high end wide receiver 2 range if he were out.
And I think that's about it here. That will be it. Games have started to kick off. So I guess thanks for watching this week. We will be back next week for week 10. Maybe Matt will be here. We don't know, but thanks for your continued support, and we will talk. Good luck in week 9, and we'll talk to you later.